The organism that I created for the individual creating an organism project was called the glowfish. The glowfish is an open ocean saltwater fish that received its name from its ability to alter its body pigmentation through a bioluminescent chemical reaction using luciferin. Luciferin is a molecule that reacts with oxygen to produce light, which many marine species possess. According to a recent study, about 76% of ocean animals are bioluminescent, and this light chemical reaction helps the organism when hunting, navigating, and communicating with other species within the ocean. Now, before I get into the habitat of the glowfish, I would like to mention that it does live off of the South American coast of Brazil. Due to its relative location, it faces the anthropogenic threat of oil spills. According to World Oil, which is a research group focused on pinpointing the world's oil supply, Brazil alone is expected to supply around a quarter of the world's offshore oil by the year 2025. This is actually very detrimental to the ocean life within dozens of miles of offshore oil rigs. A little bit more about the habitat. The glowfish is most prominent in the sunlight or photic zone of the Atlantic Ocean. And basically the sunlight zone is the top layer of the ocean and the layer that lets in the most sunlight so vegetation can grow easily. This is largely contributed to the abundance of prey residing near the surface level of the ocean, specifically in tropical climates like that of Brazil, and also the abundance of glowfish that come with this. Glowfish actually share homologous bones to that of modern mammals. Modern mammals have three small bones in the ear called ossicles that help them transmit sounds. The names of these bones are the stapes, incus, and malleus bones, and large amounts of evidence from fossils have shown and suggested that 2 out of 3 of these bones were once jaw bones that are homologous to the glowfish jaw and gill arch. This suggests a common evolutionary ancestor between the glowfish and modern mammals. When it comes to analogous traits, the glowfish and dolphin actually share common tails, flippers, and fins. However, the glowfishes are a lot smaller and structurally different. So while they do serve many of the same purposes, there is no composite evidence that the two of the animals share an evolutionary ancestor. The organism population underwent sympatric speciation, which occurs when a species of organisms becomes 2 different species while inhabiting the same area. This can occur due to an anthropogenic threat such as oil spills. Glowfish living near areas of high oil concentration adapted the ability to filter out toxic substances from the oil, while those not living near areas of the oil spills did not inherit this ability and cannot pass it down to offspring, so they cannot live in areas where oil drilling is more prominent. So one of the things mainly discussed in this project would have to be the glowfish's bioluminescent pigmentation, and it would have to be its largest necessary macroevolutionary advantage for its formation. So while it is unknown how or why the glowfish did develop this evolutionary advantage, it does benefit the organism in many ways. Now, one of the second coolest things about the organism is the process of natural selection and genetic drift through which it went, particularly the bottleneck effect, which can be credited as the most influential mechanism of evolution that has impacted the organism. Large amounts of oil drilling near the coast of Brazil led to a drastic reduction in the population size of the species, which wiped out most of the glowfish population. Those that survived were able to reproduce offspring which progressively experienced enhanced immunization to the toxic chemicals produced from oil spills and adapted the ability to release any substance with that different from water, sodium, or oxygen back into the surrounding water during its natural breathing process. The glowfish doesn't show any signs of phenotypic plasticity within its environment. The organism does undergo incomplete metamorphic development from egg to nymph to adult within the span of a year, and the habitat of the glowfish can change on a small scale. This is because fish of all kinds do need to migrate to habitats where they can feed, find shelter, reproduce, and escape extreme temperatures and water flows. The reason that the habitat does not change very much is because the glowfish's needs are generally met year-round in the climate off the coast of Brazil. Glowfish reproduce sexually through external fertilization, and they have lifespans anywhere from 6 to 8 years before limiting factors come into play. During reproduction, each glowfish parent passes down the genetic information that the offspring needs to filter out toxic substances from the oil spills. When it comes to mate selection, the male fish actually receives the highest selection pressure. In most cases, the male will try to impress the female during the mating process by visual courtship, by presenting a bright greenish-blue color to gain the attention of the female mate, and is selected for through tactile courtship based on its overall size and health. The male glowfish is usually larger, more aggressive, and darker than the female. And once the male has been selected, the female will eject her eggs into the surrounding water, which are fertilized by the male sperm. The female will often lay her eggs in somewhere undercover, such as vegetation or brushes, where the eggs can adhere to surfaces, and then the male will swim over the eggs, depositing semen onto them as he does so. The male parent is the only one that provides parental care to the offspring after the fertilization of the eggs. He provides parental care for around 7 to 10 days until the hatching process is over, and then he no longer provides any kind of parental care. The glowfish has fixed sex and reaches sexual maturity at about 1.5 years of age. The organism itself is categorized as an R-adapted species due to its short lifespan, high fecundity, rapid growth, and early maturity, and little parental care. When it comes to communication, the glowfish mainly uses honest forms of visual communication. This is when it is threatened, attracting a mate, or drawing prey. They will do this by converting from the natural state of a greenish gray to a bright bluish green color using the chemical or the molecule known as luciferin. Glowfish actually do spend large portions of their lives in loose aggregations, living and traveling in shoals or schools. It is estimated that more than 25% of the world's fish species school and about 50% shoal. This is because shoaling or schooling increases their ability to hunt, travel, and protect themselves from predators. The glowfish will often alter their body pigmentation when threatened, which warns the other members of the aggregation of environmental pressures such as predation. Behavioral ecology, mating system, and strategy. So the organism does live in a promiscuous mating system in which multiple males mate with multiple females and vice versa. And as stated before, it is evolutionarily beneficial to the parents if parental care is low, so that the reproduction rate can be high. And as stated previously, the male glowfish will gain the attention of the female suitor visually, and then he will be selected for through tactile courtship from the female. The organism's growth pattern is slow and logistic. As stated previously, the female can lay about 400 eggs, but due to limiting factors such as predation and competition, the death rate is rather high, and only 80 to 100 of the original offspring survive long enough to reach sexual maturity. The organism does have a high fecundity rate, but due to limiting factors such as resource scarcity, mating limitation, overfishing, and overexploitation, its population growth is rather slow, and only about 20 to 30 of the original 400 eggs die of old age. While some of the density-dependent limiting factors have been discussed, such as predation and competition, the glowfish does also face density-independent factors, such as oil spills, overfishing, and oceanic storms, which are common to tropical areas such as the coast of Brazil. With this being in mind, the most common distribution pattern noticed by the glowfish is clumped, which does aid in its evolutionary advantage to survive as they swim in shoals to search for food, mates, and safety. The glowfish's most observed example of symbiosis is a parasitic relationship with the commonly known nematode, who infect the glowfish through intermediate hosts such as crustaceans and feed on the fish's nutrients in the stomach and guts. The glowfish is omnivorous and tends to eat lots of vegetation and smaller organisms. The largest predator of the glowfish are Brazilian penguins and tiger sharks, who do play a role in balancing the local ecosystems and trophic chains of the glowfish. The glowfish has a specific guild with the silver-tipped tetrafish, often found in the Atlantic Ocean, who provides competition to the glowfish over smaller fish such as plankton, shrimp, and krill. The fundamental niche of the organism is the abundance of vegetation and small prey common in the southern Atlantic Ocean near the coast of Brazil. However, the realized niche is small burrows, rocky areas, or areas of high vegetation where there is a low abundance of predatory activity and high amounts of available resources for the glowfish to use. The glowfish acquires food through hunting and grazing. The glowfish consumes food such as phytoplankton and crustaceans such as shrimp, krill, crayfish, copepods, larvae, and zooplankton. As stated above, the most common predator of the glowfish are tiger sharks and the Brazilian penguin. However, oil drilling can cause much of the vegetation to die off, which leads to consequences for secondary, tertiary, and quaternary consumer populations within the habitat. The glowfish does impact matter cycling within its organism by taking in dissolved oxygen through its gills and releasing carbon dioxide back into the surrounding water. It was previously discussed that the glowfish underwent a process known as genetic drift, or the bottleneck effect. But one cool thing about the oil spills is they allowed the organisms that stayed relatively close to the anthropogenic threat to adapt in place of migrating, So the organism adapts the ability to filter out toxic substances through its respiratory process. The reason that the glowfish can breathe in small amounts of the toxic water through its mouth is due to an adaptation in the respiratory process in which the glowfish can filter out and release small increments of oil similar to the way that we release carbon dioxide. They take in water, and any toxic substances other than sodium, oxygen, or water comes out through its gills or in its excrement, urine, or any form of compound release. As the fish takes in water, it passes the gills and dissolved oxygen is absorbed while CO2 and toxic particles are exhaled back into the water. However, glowfish do avoid areas of high oil concentrations, so they don't have to move through thick, sticky, and murky water.